We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. Every week, we find interesting people in the cannabis industry to talk to and engage in conversation that can help you, the canna curious, out with whatever you might have on your mind regarding this incredibly new industry, the cannabis industry. And we always ask people to like, share, and subscribe to not only this podcast, but all the podcasts and shows on Pro Cannabis Media. And a reminder, we do everything live Friday afternoons at Green Rush Live from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. But joining us now on this particular interview is Walt Rampata from We Grow, and that's leave off the W on grow, which is weird because we have a personality named Liz Grow who has the W on the end of her name. So Walt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Tell me a little bit about We Grow data and how important data is these days, because after all, I remember the days when in media, we only were concerned about how many eyeballs, how many times in rating points, but you're telling me, and I know this, data is king now, isn't it?
Data is king. In many ways, it's worth more than gold. It has an ever increasing value to it, especially if you start to connect timelines and different behaviors. So in many ways, it provides the answers to the questions that we most commonly are asking in our industry.
Absolutely. And you know, as a media company, which is us, we're now collecting data, okay? And we're collecting data through webinars and signups. But I wonder, I'm going to pick your brain right here and ask you, if you were a media company like mine, a 24/7 news, information, and talk excuse me, channel or website, how would you grow data for us?
In multiple ways. And the real value of the data is the information contained within it. You know, your audience and those people that are listening today all have data that surrounds them. Let's be real. Today, many of the platforms that we participate in are capitalizing on that data that you own. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the names that everybody knows, you are the product in those equations, and they're utilizing your data to support those platforms. Similarly, in your realm, that data could be used to exponentially grow your audience, helping to find additional audience members that sound like, seem like, smell like, look like your existing audience. But then additionally, to better or more focused, more hyper target those audiences to give them more information that is relevant specifically to them.
Now, it says in your bio that you're also the president of Mindbuzz. Yep. I'm certainly familiar with the term, but can you explain the difference between We Grow Data and Mindbuzz?
So We Grow Data is a blockchain as a service organization. We focus on supplying or fixing, in many ways, the white space that exists in the cannabis supply chain industry today. So our focus is in helping to shore up some of the gaps in data that today are huge white spaces that the industry is unknowing about. And it unfortunately provides a diminished capacity to make decisions and do those accurately for the industry at large. So that's We Grow Data. Mindbuzz, however, is another company that I owned. It's a full service marketing agency focused only on hemp and cannabis industry companies. And so we work with those companies to do, similar to our name here, help them grow. And that focus sometimes is very much surrounded traditional marketing efforts and driving revenues. Sometimes that bleeds into operational efficiencies and the use of technology to add growth to that organization. And that's the focus of Mindbuzz.
Got it. And very well explained. And I appreciate that. I now know why I reached out to you. I think I reached out to you first, or you reached out to me. I'm not quite sure how it got together, but the name of your company, We Grow Data, obviously, not Mindbuzz, but We Grow Data, fits Calling All Growers perfectly, which is our new show. for the growing community. And I don't just mean the Canna Curious, I mean the actual people who are growing cannabis and hemp in the ground and turning it into a crop and turning it into cash and obviously driving this. I think it's now with hemp, 37 billion last year off the top of my head. Did I get that number right?
Close. Yep.
So I guess my question to you is, no, I'm not going to ask you for sponsorship right now, but I am absolutely going to talk to you about, of those two entities, hemp and cannabis with THC, which has the bigger upside, as they say in sports, potential for growth?
So let me give you a little bit of background on myself. And in addition to these two organizations, I also am a partner in US Hemp Farms. We're a farming and genetic services organization focused on providing seeds and clones to the burgeoning growing industry, mainly focused on the mid-Atlantic, and we focus primarily on medicinal hemp. So not the tall leafy stuff you use for paper and fiber and pulp, but the stuff that is generally grown for bud and medicinal uses. Mm-hmm. And what I will tell you, having history and knowledge very closely to the plant as a grower myself, let's be clear, the plant is the plant is the plant. You know, for those of us that are in the industry, there's not a whole lot of difference between a hemp medicinal plant and a THC medicinal plant. The main difference is the cannabinoid content. Right. If I were to put two of them out in the field right next to one another, you'd have a really difficult time. I would have a really difficult time telling the difference between the two unless I knew exactly which strain was in the ground on either side. It's really the cannabinoid content that drives whether it's hemp or cannabis. So as a plant species, I think the entire industry, whether it be cannabinoids focused on THC or cannabinoids focused on the minor cannabinoids, we're seeing growth all over the spectrum. And I think to answer that question as to one side or the other is really challenging because, if we go back to the statement, the plant is the plant is the plant, once we start to get into the science and the mechanics of the plant, and we start to really understand the basics of the cannabinoid breakdown within those species, it really, what we're focused on is the effects at the end result that the consumer is going to want to realize. And in that stature, we can mimic those solutions, those physical effects to treat those particular ailments through the plant and modifying those cannabinoids, regardless of where they're coming from in an end product. And to be clear, we're also seeing a lot of advances within algae growth and other different farming techniques for producing cannabinoids that lie outside even the farming practices that I've come to know.
So that was great. And I certainly understand all that. And now I'm going to ask you the question about the entourage effect, because people in the industry have explained to me many, many times that you really do need a little bit more THC in the plant to get the maximum effect of the medicine in the cannabinoids, the CBDs, the CBGs, and the CBNs of the world. And by the way, do not ask me to pronounce exactly what those are. The fact that I can say endocannabinoid and cannabinoid is enough. Do you know what I'm saying?
And that's something that we should all be mindful of. Every Homo sapien, that means human being standing upright, actually every mammal, including the sea slug on the sea floor, has an endocannabinoid system. That means we have a system inside our bodies that produces cannabinoids. And the easiest way to supplement that system is with phytocannabinoids, plant-based cannabinoids. So similar to taking our vitamins on a daily basis from Nature's Care or from whatever manufacturer, if you want to go walk into GNC and get your vitamins there, those are supplemental to the vitamins that we need inside our body on a basic, standard level. Phytocannabinoids do the same thing in a supplementary fashion to the endocannabinoid system, resetting or adjusting the receptors that control many aspects within our body, everything from the thought and the neuroreceptors in our brains to our heart to our gut. The endocannabinoid system is entranced in every aspect of the human species. So In that, phytocannabinoids can be used very specifically to treat very different things. And again, going back to that comment or the question earlier about which is going to take off, the THC side or the minor cannabinoid side. Again, I think it's going to be as we get to an industry of standardization and production and meeting the demands of today's consumers. And also when traditional medicine catches up with the understandings of what's happening in this industry, we're going to see a change in dynamic where we're going to be focused on the cannabinoid makeup that you're looking to purchase rather than the strain or plant specific makeup.
Gotcha. And I actually followed that whole thing, which is fascinating to me after all these years. We talk a little bit about the descriptive words psychoactive. And I've learned from a hemp master, if you will, that CBD, CBN, CBG, the main minor cannabinoids, I guess would be the way to look at them from your perspective, all are psychoactive, but they're non-intoxicating. And a lot of media make that mistake. I made the mistake 3 years ago and learned, and I'd love to come back and say, I learned this, that those cannabinoids certainly interact with your endocannabinoid system and your psyche. It does not get you high. It does not get you intoxicated. So therein lies the rub between these two plants. And now it looks like they want to up the percentage of THC in the hemp plant to 1%. Is that a good thing for the industry? Is that going to be easier? How does that work?
So let's be clear, to effectively grow a medicinal hemp plant and to bud it out so you're optimizing the minor cannabinoid makeup of that plant. It's really challenging to stay lower than a 1% threshold. Getting it down to a 0.3% threshold is extremely challenging.
Right.
Not only do you have to be mindful of the strain that you're growing, but you also have to be mindful of all the other dynamics. And when I say all the other dynamics, that includes Mother Nature. So not only the nutrients that you're putting into the ground, the growth cycle, when you're pulling it out of the ground, if you pull it out before the first frost or after the first frost, all those things change that cannabinoid amount and the makeup of those different cannabinoids. And to maximize the medicinal minor cannabinoids, the Cs, and those that are contained within the C family, CBG, CBN, CBD, unfortunately, to truly maximize those out, you're also pulling all the other cannabinoids with it. And so, very easy example, if we were to pull our, when we've grown in the past, when we pull our plants out before frost, and I say before frost because interestingly enough, that cold snap, the drop below 32 degrees for a period of time will actually increase the minor cannabinoids in a particular plant. So most advanced growers of hemp that are growing outdoors are trying to push as close to the frost or after the first frost to maximize their minor cannabinoids. Unfortunately, when you do that, you're also, again, pulling all the other cannabinoids up as well. And so what we've seen over time is that you'll have variations in THC that will range anywhere from 0.3 to 1% or even further, depending on how far past that frost you push and how far you push that plant. And again, we're trying to maximize what we're growing this plant for, and that's the medicine. And at the end of the day, the amount of THC still contained in there is such a minor amount that the overall effects that plant would have on a person are going to be minor when it comes to the quote unquote intoxicating amounts. But to properly give the industry the leeway that it needs to produce these plants at medicinal capacity, all of us that have ever grown this plant in an outdoor setting have been pushing for at least a 1% threshold, because it'll give us a lot more room to grow more strains and provide more medicine to the masses.
I have a feeling I know the answer to this next question. How frustrating is it for a grower of hemp to not have any guidelines from your federal government about what you can and what you can't put into food, what you can claim, what you can't claim? It's everybody I talked about this says this is the biggest issue, right or wrong?
Well, I'd say it's one of the big issues, because also married to that is standardization. And so we've got an issue inside the industry and an issue outside the industry. We've got the federal government outside the industry trying to provide insight for our consumers and put some level of regularity in the information that they're expecting, similar to any other supplement that we should take today. I mean, if again, you walk into GNC, there's a lot of information on those product labels, and a lot of information conversely that's not on product labels that are in the hemp and cannabis space. So there's absolutely that push that we want more information. I mean, interestingly enough, in the state of Maryland, if you were to look at the guidelines for what's supported on a particular label, it's not just your THC, it's all the cannabinoids and their particular counterparts. So as a consumer in Maryland specifically, I can make a truly educated guess, again, referring to that entourage effect, as to which strain I should be choosing. However, my daughter, who lives in Arizona and is also a medicinal patient, unfortunately in Arizona, they only put the major cannabinoids on their labels. So she only knows this has 24% THC and maybe a little bit of CBD in it. She doesn't know all the terpenes. She doesn't know. And really, if we're to understand the science, the unsung heroes are the terpenoids. And really, that's where the effects of this plant in treating those different ailments really come into play. So standardization from an industry level inside the industry also is a major issue that we're trying to tackle, because as we get to a place inside our industry where we're testing for those cannabinoids, now we can inform those answers that the government is seeking or would be employing on the rest of the industry. And that's some of where Wegrodata sits in that mix. Our focus is to help understand where those gaps are so that we can help guide the industry in the most effective areas.
Can we enlighten some of our elected officials about the benefits of this plant with your data? Can we do that?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, so as a blockchain as a service organization, we are already in talks with, I'm not going to mention exactly which state, but we're already in talks with one of the major states in the union about looking at our platform as a track and trace option for the industry. And when I say industry, she is specifically looking at the agricultural industry at large, which our industry fits underneath of. So in that, you know, blockchain specifically is what's going to provide that oversight that currently is lacking because of the technology that is available to our current industry at large.
Right. And, you know, you're using the term, can you define blockchain for those that perhaps, you know, right over their heads?
So easiest way to break it down is we have over the years come to understand that I'm going to shake this thing here. This computer that I'm sitting here talking on is run by a language called code. And that code tells this computer or this device what to do. Mm-hmm. And over time, that code or those languages that support these machines has advanced. And we've gone from basically a kindergarten code that we started out with, 20 years ago, to now a college level code. And blockchain, and that's what's available to most of us today, is a college level code base. Blockchain is a doctorate level code and overarches everything in many ways, fills in gaps that we couldn't do with the rest of what we had available through the last number of years. So it's not to not scare people. People hear blockchain, they hear the words crypto, they hear all these terminologies lately, and they start getting nervous. And really all it is just another language that is running these machines that is a little bit more advanced than what we've come from.
So can an Apple computer talk to a PC, please?
Well, and that's really the promise of blockchain, is that it's going to allow us the ability to seamlessly and securely communicate cross platforms. So where our platform sits is in many ways in the middle of a large wheel if we were to look at, using a metaphor, WeGrow would sit at the center with spokes going out to the supply chain and all the businesses surrounding the supply chain and all the data that they produce within the supply chain. Everything from the nutrient suppliers to the point of sale companies in the dispensaries, to the EMR services that the producers have inside their grows, all the way to post-consumer data and journaling applications. All that information surrounding the industry is what will allow us to paint a picture of where the gaps are. And blockchain has the ability as an innate technology to do that in a secure fashion. And what blockchain does is it distributes the information across thousands of devices, but with one single key. So interestingly enough, your Walt Rampata's information will be on 1,000 different devices. One device will have my name, another device will have my medical history, another device will have my phone number, another one will have my buying habits, and I'm using funny examples, but you won't be able to get an entire picture of who Walt is from just looking at one of those particular machines. In order to be able to truly understand who I am, I need the keys. And that's the beauty of the crypto/blockchain universe, is that in a secure fashion, I hold those keys and I can, through one application on my phone, assemble all those different pieces of information into one location. But it's only I with that information and those keys that can do that.
Interesting. And that's why, cybersecurity is growing so exponentially as a career in an industry, because it's that PhD level that they're operating at, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Hey, that was by far the best, most simple way to define blockchain that I've had. So very good. You get to go to the head of the class, I promise. Tell me about Maryland, because right now there's some movement towards legalization, and they're talking about perhaps making it onto the ballot question in the fall. Where does that state stand as far as their medical versus adult use? Or is either, that we know adult use is not allowed, but tell me about what their medical program is like.
So we've had medical in Maryland now, I want to say going on 4 years. 2018, I think, was the advent of legalization here. And very quickly after the advent, one of my side hustles in trying to learn this industry is I got badged up as a licensed bud tender in the state of Maryland. I worked at a dispensary behind the counter for a number of months, just wanting to learn more and understand what was the consumer, the patient on the other side of that desk saying to me. What were they looking for? What were the questions they were asking for? And was completely blown away every single day at the varying cacophony of different individuals from wild different walks of life. Everything from the police officer to the federal agent to the housewife to the 56-year-old retired entrepreneur to the 75-year-old. It was all over the place, and they all had similar stories. What we're seeing now, though, as the medicinal market has advanced in Maryland, everybody's now crying for more. The patients themselves are starting to get to that place where they're realizing the true costs of what this medicine holds. And some of what's being pushed for is not just legalization from a rec perspective, but additions to the medicinal side of the equation with the allowance of home grows. So we're seeing all kinds of different conversations that lead towards rec. We're talking hopefully within the next 2 years, rec might hit actually and be on the ballot for vote in Maryland. But we're also hopeful that from a medicinal side, home grow capacity enters into that as well. Because let's be real, at the end of the day, it's really wild that we have to pay for something that we can grow in our backyard.
Yeah, except for those that have black thumbs, okay? Because I cannot take on the responsibility of being responsible for another live thing that I'm growing, okay? And trust me, I use this line all the time. I don't want that responsibility. I do want to know where my cannabis is coming from, how it has been tested, what is the cannabinoid makeup, and more importantly, what is the terpene makeup? Because isn't the terpene the steering mechanism for those cannabinoids?
And the way I kind of describe it to the newcomer or the new patient or somebody just checking out cannabis as an alternative is that the major cannabinoids, the T's of the world and the C's, those tend to predict your flight altitude. So how high you get.
Right. Also,
THC takes you up, CBD brings you down.
Right.
Whereas the terpenes, however, tell you what destination you're going to, whether you're going to Jamaica for a party or whether you're going to New York for a night out on a town. You know, it's the terps that tell you the different effect that you're going to have while you're in flight.
Which is why you're starting to see more and more dispensaries carry mood, like the sleepy strain, the focus strain, the mixed strain, if you will. And they're going for more what the effect is, as opposed to where the strain comes from and where did it grow and who recommends it, that sort of thing. And what I'm hearing from you too is you recognize that people, as they start using this product more and more research is done. You learn about the product yourself and what you can handle and what effect it's going to have on you, because as you might expect, everybody's different and it affects everybody differently. Right, Walt?
Very much so. Very much so. And to that point, you know, one of the, I talked to you about the spoke and the wheel analogy of where WeGrow sits. We have a number of partners around the supply chain that are already connected to the system, the ecosystem that we're building. And one of those, I mentioned point of sale company. We've got a point of sale company. We also have a post-consumer purchasing application. So actually, it's a journaling application for the medical patient specifically. After their purchase, they utilize this application to journal instead of on a traditional pen and paper. Use an application on your phone and journal, you know, what did you consume? What was the makeup? What was in it? Terpenes, cannabinoids, minor cannabinoids. How did it make you feel? What effects did it give you? Were those effects that you wanted? And the beauty of this application is that over time, it's going to help you hone in on the cannabinoid terpenoid profile that most accurately benefits the ailments that you're trying to treat. And it's really interesting over time. People have done that pen and paper old school for a very long time. But now through the application, we're starting to see immediate changes in the ability of people to associate not just strain names to particular effects, but cannabinoid makeups to particular effects, so that when they're going into a dispensary setting, they're less looking for a particular strain name and more so looking for particular cannabinoids and terpenoids that will work to fulfill those ailments.
You really need a science degree to go shopping now for cannabis, where back in the day, and I don't know how old you are, but I'm 64 years old. I remember the 60s and 70s. And that's when I started as a 14-year-old kid. You know, we'd meet somebody in the parking lot that somebody told us was cool and had weed, and we would go, and that's where we did our business. Now it's completely different. And you really do have to educate yourself before you go shopping. Or perhaps Walt is the bud tender behind the counter, which I don't think is true most of the time.
Right. And that's the thing. It's really difficult today for the consumer, and that's where all of this comes into play. You know, the conversations around data, the conversations around cannabinoids, it all plays into the end person who's consuming the product at the end of the day. And you know, I'm old enough that I nearly got expelled from Villanova for smoking a joint in my dorm room back in the day, and I used to buy Mexican brickweed back in the day. So I you know, seeds and stems, those were part of the conversation from my days back in younger smoking. And that's not where we are today. Truly, it's, you know, the variation in what is available to us in the marketplace is immense. And the makeup of those products and different plants and strains is also just as equally immense. The one thing I'll stress to your audience, and you've already stated this, is know your grower, know where it's coming from. You know, it's the same when you go to the food store. It's the same when you go to GNC. Anything that you're going to put inside this system, you want to know where it's coming from. You know, at the end of the day, you want to know what's going into that. You know, you may not know all the nutrients that are going into the ground, but you want to have some sort of semblance of assurance that they're not using harmful pesticides and that they're not making their way into what you're consuming at the end of the day.
100%. And some states, of course, have stricter guidelines and testing than other states. I know Massachusetts tests for more pesticides than hardly even exist right now, but that's what they decided they would do with these regulations. And you know what? You play by the rules in each state anyway, right?
Right. Right.
On the federal side, are you confident? Because I'm not.
No, we've got, well, and for all the reasons that we've talked about, you know, when it comes to being able to scale this to a larger degree, we've got some major challenges as an industry. We've already talked about standardization, and where WeGrow sits is very securely in helping to bridge some of those gaps with the data portion. But also underneath of WeGrow, we have our own DeFi token that's currently available on the exchanges for purchase. And that token specifically has the benefits where we're looking long-term as being a payment solution for the industry. So there are many challenges, you know, when we start to talk about, you know, federally, what we need to do to get to a place where we can transact at a federal level. And banking and compliance and tax laws that are favorable to us as an industry, similar to other industries, we've got a lot of road to make up before we get to that place.
If it does go federal, are you more confident that the Department of Agriculture versus Food and Drug Administration versus DEA? And I think I'm missing one more. Where would you like to see the industry be under the umbrella of?
As a hemp grower and having been greeted at my back door by 2 federal DEA task force agents during my growing season, I will tell you that I would much prefer the Department of Ag visits over the DEA visits. And honestly, let's be clear, you know, this goes back to something I already said. It's ridiculous to me, understanding the dynamics of this plant, that we have to go somewhere else to purchase something that we can grow in our backyard. At the end of the day, you know, this plant was so valuable to us as a nation. When you were when this nation was born, it was required as a landowner that 40% of your acreage be devoted to hemp. Let's go back to our roots. You know, we forget the history and how this plant has played within the lives of so many, and and the stigma and everything that's been jammed down everybody's throat for so long. At the end of the day, this is a plant, this is a plant, this is a plant. And you keep coming back to it. It's not a drug. And it's an entire history of millennium. It's never killed anybody. It's not, you can never overdose on it, no matter the, you know, you have to consume such a ridiculously large amount that nobody would ever be able to do that so at the end of the day, it's a plant, it's a plant, it's a plant. It should be treated as such. I would love to see the farmers markets of old that you can sometimes bump into in the upper Northwest and places like Washington and Oregon, where you can actually openly exchange and sell hemp and cannabis in an open market, like your carrots, like your green beans, like your lettuce. You know, so I would much prefer the Department of Ag oversight, but I've got real questions as to all of their capabilities, because quite frankly, none of those governing bodies today still understand what this thing is.
Yeah, and you know, it's amazing, and I've learned quite a bit over the last 3 years since I've been doing all these interviews and talking to people. And by the way, some of the smartest people I know are the scientists and geneticists. It's really interesting to see the difference between the scientist and the geneticist, if you catch my drift on that, because the knowledge base doesn't care how many letters you have after your name. It's what you do know about that plant more than anything else. And some people have to go to school and go into labs and learn how to break down the cannabinoids, and some, let's just say, are streetwise would be a good way to look at that. The legacy growers, if you will. And I find them both to be fascinating. And when you have a chance to talk to the two of them together, it really is an amazing experience. Walt Rampata from WeGrow, that's without the W, Wegrodata.com. That's where you can find Walt and all his people. And I guess contact me at info at is the best way to find you, Walt.
info@wegrodata.com. Please reach out to us. You have questions, you want to know more, we're available.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today on another special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. And a reminder again that it is a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Meet Caduceus Science, the alternative wellness company. You know CBD, but how about CBG, CBN? That's right, Caduceus Science produces a range of full-spectrum products, all lab-tested in small batches to maintain the highest quality of products. CaduceusScience.com. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.